The idea of a competition show having episodes that don't directly drive the competition forward seems a bit weird, right? That doesn't mean someone needs to be eliminated every episode, as shows like The Amazing Race, Love Island, or Big Brother are structured without needing to always kick someone off, but those shows don't need world building. They don't need to serve a purpose beyond the nature of the competition, which made the small slew of Battle for Dream Island episodes, not structured around the competition, special. They all used to be held in very high regard until TPOT 18, aka BFB 31, was released. Despite existing for similar reasons as the previous non-competition episodes, this episode quickly became polarizing among fans. Just look at the IMDb score. It's almost an inverted bell curve. Seeing this divide begs the question though, how do non-competition episodes even work in a show like this? What are their strengths? Why is TPOT 18 considered weak? And what could they cover in the future? To answer these questions, let's dive into the successes of the 3 other episodes before looking deeper into the supposed failures of TPOT 18. Once we know what each episode does right and wrong, we could fully understand and appreciate the art of the non-competition episode. Alright, well BFDIA 13 wasn't the first non-competition episode released IRL. It does take place first in-universe, along with providing very nice blueprints for how an episode like this could be written. To understand why it's so effective, it's important to firstly remember the plot thread strung both earlier in the season and in later seasons that came out before this episode. We got lots of characters trapped in the TLC/LOL. Many of those characters still look like they did in 2011. Rocky lost his vomit, and Pin wants to regain her limbs, face, and size. The competition never gave the breathing room needed to fully explore these ideas, so by removing the competition for an episode, you gain said breathing room to start making some connections. It also helps that the setup for the episode is just simple and clean. Ruby and Needle gotta recover everyone who died in the challenge last episode, which inspires Gelatin, Ice Cube, Fiery, and Rocky to leave the WTF for a grand day out. Their adventures are low-stakes fun. Even as someone who isn't a super big fan of any of the 4, all of them are quite good this episode. Going across the city adds on to the world building that some previous episodes dipped into, and it keeps things interesting as the story slowly becomes more important as the episode goes on. This is cleverly inverted with the B-plot, being Queenie's journey to the plant's core, with the hopes of bringing Pin back. You, as the viewer, see this as the important plotline, thinking Pin will be brought back by Queenie, which makes his attempt ending in failure feel surprising and saddening. He clearly cares about her, and even though he doesn't succeed, his journey does not feel like a waste of time, since him trying to bring Pin back sparks the LOLers to leave the grasslands, which leads to the big switch-up. The silly A-plot suddenly becomes the important one, with Gelatin malfunctioning an upgrade ray that leads to Rocky regaining his vomit, and everyone in the LOL getting their modern designs. Combined with the episode ending with Fiery recovering Leafy, and the challenge for next episode being clearly set up, and you got yourself an amazing episode without any need for a contest. Seriously, this episode is top tier, and practically the to-do guide for how to do an episode like this, which makes some of the places where the other episodes falter interesting to look at after the slam dunk that was this episode. It's a nice breather from the competition that, through striking a balance between comedy and drama, stands as one of the best BFDIA episodes, and maybe one of the best in the whole show. That's enough glazing though, as it's time to dive in to IDFB 1. Now, for both the first attempt at making a non-competition episode for what would have been / will be a non-competition season, IDFB 1 exists in a weird spot right now. It's not a bad spot, and shows more ways you can make an episode like this work, but the context it existed in when it was released is very different from the modern perspective. You see, while BFDIA 13 thrives off answering questions, IDFB 1 poses them. What have the contestants been doing the past 3 years? Why is Fire in a cage? What's the deal with the golf ball flashback? How'd Rocky get his barf back? When did Leafy get recovered? Why is everyone stuck in Yoyo-land? And how did the contestants get trapped in the LOL? We now know the answer to most of these questions thanks to BFDIA returning, but some still being a mystery, combined with the episode having to serve as a reintroduction to the cast, is what makes it exist in such a weird place. That doesn't mean the episode is bad though, far from it, but it does have a way looser plot. Free Smart has some focus, getting a fun scene at the beginning, and an interesting conversation between Pencil and Book near the end. Pin is chatting with Fries who's grown potatoes, and Golf Ball and Tennis Ball go to the Science Museum, where we get that previously mentioned flashback and a lead-in to how the format of the season will go. Viewers will be voting, but it will be for the contestant they want to see let out of the LOL. That's really all there is to the episode, being only 10 minutes long, but I'd still say it's pretty good. The loose structure works, I like the character interactions, it has plenty of funny moments, and it serves as a nice introduction to the season. Honestly, I wish I had more to say, other than it's different, but still good. All that really matters for the modern comparison is its good use of its cast, so let's just move on to TPOT 11. I'm going to be a bit more detailed with this one, considering that it's not only in the same season as our hottest topic, but also with how they have very similar reasons to exist. Flashback to BFB, where everyone who got eliminated was trapped in the exit within 4, forced to do algebra forever. BFB 10 is the first time we see them as the status quo resets, along with a rejoin vote where Leafy returns to the game in BFB 11. You could say that this is where the Exeter's plot started, but I wouldn't say it truly begins until BFB 16. Basically, everyone's getting real sick of being trapped, so they try to stack their way to 4's mouth for an escape. When that isn't working, they then pivot to escape through the just eliminated Spongy, but only him and Loser are able to actually get out. We don't see what actually happens to everyone else for all of BFB post-split, but we do start getting teasers throughout Teapot. Teapot 1 ends with a lie unlocking a back door in the exit classroom. Teapot 7 shows everyone aside from Robati actually leaving the classroom, revealing a Xenoblade Chronicles 2-ass environment beyond the door, and Teapot 9 shows everyone splitting into groups trying to find different ways of escaping. Like the plot thread set up before BFDIA 13, these post-credit breadcrumbs naturally lead us to an obvious yet intriguing conclusion. We need a full episode to resolve this plot, and Teapot 11 is just that. We get 4, plotlines to look at, but unlike BFDIA 13, there aren't any huge differences between them, with one exception. Pencil, Bracelety, and David are technically the most important since they communicate to the other groups that they need to find stuff for a new stack, but outside of that, they mostly just get into classroom hijinks. The trios of Lai, Match, and Stapy, and 8-Ball, Fiery Jr., and Dora are doing basically the same thing, with the only real differences between them being the character dynamics and setting. My one main problem with the episode would be how restricting the cast to trios makes the structure a bit basic, but it's much better than, foreshadowing, making the audience confused. We even get a little spice with the final character, Robati, since he was abandoned in the original exit classroom. We only see a couple scenes of him attempting to escape before he ends up saving the day, incapacitating 4 long enough for everyone to escape. The episode then ends with everyone successfully leaving 4, but then being locked up in a kitchen, plus a post-credit scene with Purpleface being trapped and 3 being teased. Overall, I think this episode is still good, even if it feels weaker than BFDIA 13 due to its structure, and IDFB 1 due to its weaker character dynamics. It still achieves what it's set out to do in resolving a plotline that's been on the back burner for a very long time, along with setting up some interesting new things. Remember, Teapot hadn't really kicked it into high gear yet, so everyone's expectations for the episode were met, and were never super lofty. Teapot 18, however, was not given this luxury, And now that I've detailed what all the other non-competition episodes did right, let's get into TPOT 18 and see where the episode strides and stumbles. Before the episode itself though, let's first talk about expectations. June 2nd is the day we first hear about the episode through an official post made by Jacknjellify. This isn't surprising, as one was made last year for both BFDIA 13 and TPOT 11, but it's important to bring up because of how different of a place TPOT is currently in. While the episode is described as a fun episode with the characters from BFB post-split that would lead into the next episode, the raised stakes of the season made it so that people were expecting more. Just look at all the plotlines that have been on the back burner. Combined with how high of a bar BFDIA 13 set by being a fun episode that still had lots of plot progression, made expectations for the episode high, varied, and growing over the 19-day period between the announcement and episode release. This meant that if what someone expected was either underwhelming or flat out not explored, it's no surprise that disappointment would most likely ignite within diehard fans. Enough beating around the bush though. Let's fully jump in to TPOT 18. The episode opens with Lollipop writing a letter to 4 declaring that her yellow-faced golden credit card was stolen and that 4 should assist with finding the thief. Because if anyone's going to max out a credit card and not pay the bill to put Yellowface in more debt, it's going to be her. She doesn't have to wait long for a response though, as 4 just got back to the Pillory Ruins and starts to grill most of the post-splitters on where the credit card is. He then jacks their brains into a memory machine and wait, let's slow down a moment. I think the start of the episode is great at reintroducing Lollipop, but we get no such time with any of the other post-splitters. It's not like it's been 4 years since we've seen these characters thanks to BFDIA coming back, but giving only 47 seconds after the intro plays to let the contestants breathe before the main event begins makes the start feel a bit rushed. That's not even the biggest concern though, as once everyone enters Bubble's memory, we get a glimpse on how the tech works before the challenge is introduced. The cast needs to find who stole the credit card by going into each other's memories. 4 then unplugs everyone aside from Bubble before scrambling the memories each character is to journey into. Alright, that's the introduction, and while I don't want to keep being negative, this beginning part makes it very easy to explain one of the 2 core reasons as to why this episode is so polarizing, that being the setup. Having a challenge in a non-competition episode is actually not the big issue, despite how weird that sentence sounded. It could be a nice way to bring all these characters together, like a board game at a family party, but the goal of finding the credit card feels super disconnected to anything TPOT set up. Combined with how the goal itself is a bit weak, and you have a premise that doesn't really draw you in compared to the previous no contest episodes. Yet even as a way to bring the characters together, the structure is further harmed by how the memory machine is not explained very well. On rewatch, it's much easier to understand what's happening, but on the first and some people's only viewing, having everyone start in one memory, getting scrambled around, jumping between characters, and sometimes seeing the same events through someone else's memory, it can be hard to follow. Having a weak motivation and creating confusion gives TPOT 18 a bad start. A cleaner setup or better visuals for the explanation could have worked much better, and if there's any part of the flack this episode received that I agree with, it's definitely the beginning, because once the episode properly begins, it's pretty fun, even with some imbalanced screen time. As I implied earlier, the episode does jump around a lot, making it harder to be thorough, but I'll go through what the major characters do in the memories, starting with Bubble. Seeing the conversation between her, Ruby, and Match finally happen after being teased was nice. I get it not being a big, dramatic, heartfelt scene could be disappointing, but remember that their original argument was over 7 years ago in BFB 11 over Match trying too hard to become a leader like Pencil. I'm not going to get into the whole free smart drama, but what matters is that their argument doesn't get closure thanks to Match being eliminated in BFB 12. This made the idea that Bubble was still mad at her fester within Match over a long period of time, when in reality, Bubble is not someone who holds grudges, and even wished she forgave Match right after her elimination. Learning that it was all in her head was a relieving feeling, and my only issue with how it was done had to be how it was teased for 2 episodes in a way that made it seem more important than it truly was. Wow, that was a lot on Bubble, so I'll speed things up. Spongy was just a chill guy, and I liked his scenes with Woody, who was also pretty good with learning how to chill. Loser was given some nice depth. Blocky just trying to steal the credit card in Lollipop's memory was fun. Lollipop giving bad business advice in Flower's memory, and just not caring since it was a false memory, was really fun too. Along with her cool role in the climax, Taco was just fine, definitely better than her post-split days, and while Flower and Gelatin didn't get much content, I liked what we did get. All that's left from the memory portion is Profiley, who was a little annoying, not gonna lie, but the role in the big fight at the end, along with the fight itself, was very dynamic. Going back to the pacing, I could see how the jumping between characters wouldn't appeal to some people, but personally, I think it works in an episode not trying to take itself too seriously. The name of the episode is BFB 31 after all, so it's clearly trying to replicate the more fast-paced style of BFB post-split than the plot-centric TPOT. That is, until it isn't, because in the last 3 minutes, we get some really interesting plot teasers that to many people made most of the episode feel frivolous. This brings me to the second core issue I'd say this episode has, that being balance. Let's look at those episode ratings again. Both scoring extremes carry comparable weight, making the difference fall between them in the middle. TPOT 18 is not like that, as we end with a loser going to find winner, 4 in the 1 plotline, Balloony with the announcer, and X leaving the hotel, closing the episode. Having fresh teasers at the end is to be expected for these non-competition episodes, since all the other ones have them, but the cores of those episodes all felt more significant. By only having the Bubble and Match resolution, that some people already think was disappointing, in the main chunk of the episode, it makes everything feel backloaded. Scooting 1 or 2 of these teasers, probably the loser Balloony stuff, closer to the middle of the episode between the fast-paced challenge, would make it feel much more well-rounded, because while I don't think the middle is a waste of time, it definitely feels less significant to the end of the episode. In my TV analysis, I said that I really don't think any TPOT episode is flat out bad, which does include this episode. I wouldn't even call this one the worst of the season, but it does have quite a few problems. It's a fun watch overall, but is hampered enough by its setup and balance to the point where I would constitute it as a pretty mid-episode. Now that we've gone through all the episodes, let's review their strengths and weaknesses. BFDIA 13 has a sound structure, along with great serious and goofy moments. IDFB 1 can be undercut by revelations made in modern BFDIA, but is still a neat time capsule full of great character interactions and mystery. TPOT 11 does well to conclude a storyline that's been cooking for a while, even with its simpler style, and TPOT 18 may stumble with its high expectations, setup, and pacing, but is still a fun episode that works better on rewatch, and likely better as the season continues. No matter how you'd rank the episodes, I think it's fair to say that each episode brings something different to the table, but they all do so by achieving similar things. The answer as to why non-competition episodes can be amazing at their best and still functional at their worst can be summarized with a simile. They're like bridges, which may sound dumb, but just hear me out. Unlike traditional Part 1 and 2s, the non-competition episodes of BFDI make an active attempt to remove themselves from the typical formula or setting of the show to give both a nice change of pace and some neat plot progression. They don't replace the main plot, but instead work in tandem with its storytelling by concluding old storylines and developing new ones. We know non-competition episodes will likely continue thanks to IDFB, but I wouldn't be surprised if we got more in the currently ongoing seasons as well. Having too many could disrupt the overall pacing of the show, but as they exist now, I think that non-competition episodes have been done well, and definitely have a place in the series. That's all I gotta say. I have more videos in the works, so if you haven't, please subscribe, like, share, hit that bell, comment if you have thoughts, and thank you for watching.